Singing is. Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the Fantasy Master Lothario, Gray Albright. How's it going over there, Gray?
Good, man. I'm doing all right. We had a comment last week on the YouTube video saying that that I was looking old, and I just wanted to squash that immediately and say I am fresh and deaf. Thank you.
Always, Gray. Always. Haven't aged a day since you started the show, and
I try to let run off my back like off a duck's back. Water off a duck's back. Insults, but when someone comes with lies saying that I look old, I don't stand for lies.
That's
not stand for. So
in fairness, somebody also
I appreciate people coming to the YouTube comments, and they're always a joy to read. But yeah, I'm not old. Okay, I'm not old. I'm looking as young as ever. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly, Gray, which is older than I am. So yeah. Yeah, so we also had some comments about how we don't understand position eligibility and catchers and whatnot. And
you know what? If I see a comment that is related to fantasy, I skim right past that. I'm only interested in the comments regarding my looks. That's all I care about.
Vanity, thy name is Gray Albright.
Take it easy out there. That's what you say.
Gray, I won't ever compare you to a catcher. Well, maybe a first baseman. We're starting to get sexier as we move into the first base. It used to be a really sexy position. It might have been the sexiest position at one point. Now it's more like hot 40, 50-year-old territory, but there's still some upside here at the position. Before we get into it, real quick reminder, podcast league I'm putting together, slow auction, custom head-to-head categories league, win my money for free. I know the last one was the Catchers podcast, so maybe there weren't a whole lot of people that listened to it, but now that we're into a bigger, better position, maybe more of you listening. Also, the RCLs, I'm sure, will be coming out to sign up for eventually, and I'll have one of those. Let's get into first base, Gray.
So, we also our DraftKings code Pat Hoberg. Just use the code Pat Hoberg at the door, and have you even heard this story? You haven't even heard it.
I don't know what's going on.
You have no idea what I'm talking about. You've been on the toilet doing diarrhea for the last 2 hours. For people just joining us, Beaton is actually having a stomach flu. But for the people, namely Beaton, who haven't heard the news yet, it turns out that there's another gambling scandal in MLB, and it rhymes with Matt Boberg. umpire Pat Hoberg is being investigated for gambling, but it turns out, oddly enough, all of the evidence somehow got deleted by Pat Hoberg. I wonder what happened. I don't know. He was according to umpire scorecards on Twitter. He was the most accurate umpire in the major leagues last year, and he just happened to misplace all the evidence that have who's to say? I don't know.
Man is out here trying to throw games, and he's the most accurate umpire. I just want that to sink in for everybody listening for a second. And trying to throw games, most accurate umpire. That should tell us something about the status of umpires and why, robot umpires are looking more and more favorable every day. Let's let's get into first base, Gray. This is already going to be like a 3-hour podcast, as all our positional podcasts are. So 1 and 2, thankfully we've talked about them. Vlad Jr. and Bryce Harper, 1 and 2. We talked about them in the top 20 podcast. You can go listen to that one and comment about that one on YouTube and tell us how old or dashing.
No, don't tell us how old we are.
Let's move on to the second tier here, Gray, which is where we start the show. Number 3, Matt Olson. Last year had 29 home runs, 78 runs, 98 RBIs, 247, 333, 457. You have projected for 33 home runs, 94 runs, 112 RBI, and hit 254. You know, the K rate went up a little bit, walk rate went down some, kind of struggled in the first half. What are your thoughts on Matt Olson here? Obviously, you're not too scared of him, considering he's at 3, or this is going to tell us something about the position right away.
Yeah, I think in the big picture here, I do think first basemen are not quite as good as they once were, as you alluded to, but not quite as good is also very subjective. It's not that isn't quite putting the nail on the head as how poor the first base position is. There's some guys to draft, and you know we'll go over them as we go along. But yeah, I mean it's not great that the third best first baseman is Matt Olson. I do look at his numbers, and I think the Braves just in general were so down last year across the board, from like Albies, Acuna, obviously injury. Albies was injury too. Michael Harris is injured every year, but Matt Olson was down. It was Sean Murphy. I mean, across the board, the entire Braves lineup going into last year looked so good, and then turned out to be so bad. But I think with Matt Olson specifically, I like the bounce back. I think he's, what is he, 30 years old? Okay, so he's going to be 31 in March. But yeah, I don't see like his numbers falling off as dramatically as they did last year, to the point where he's not going to be worthwhile. I don't know if we're going to get back to the 54 homers that he was in 2023. But I don't see why he can't, like you mentioned the Ks were up and the walks were down, but I mean, within the margin of error on the Ks, like the Ks were up a little bit, like 1%. Yeah, very small. So I'm not really worried about that. I think my biggest concern is probably his hard hit percentage. That was down pretty dramatically, down to the worst mark of his career. But again, everything was bad in Atlanta last year. So I think you got to write off, Austin Riley too. I mean, you got to write off a little bit of this as to being like, everything's terrible around him. He's in a slump. Those things start to perpetuate themselves. And before you know it, a 1 or 2 month slump becomes a season long thing. So I'm not really as concerned about Matt Olson as maybe I should be. And, like when we get to September of this year and we're looking back in retrospect, maybe I should be more concerned. But I feel like it's just an off year, and we have to just, write it off and say like, okay, he's going to bounce back, maybe not to 54 homers, but as long as he gets like mid 30s homers and the whole Braves lineup bounces back to a certain extent, so then he'll get back those runs he lost last year. So if we're looking at like, around a, say, 35 to 40 homer hitter with 90 plus runs, 100 plus RBIs, 250 average, that is essentially, it is what it is, really. Like that's what the position is. That's like kind of like the best you're going to do relatively, other than the guys who are, above him in the rankings, the Vlad Jr. and the Bryce Harper. But Matt Olson, for my money, is like as good as you're going to get for a guy who has a solid track record, a good floor. So at worst, you get last year, which was not great. But at the end of the day, 30 homers, 100 RBIs, 80 runs, and a 247 average. As not great as that is, it's also not terrible. I mean, it's not like that kills your entire team. And other guys killed you, not Matt Olson. While he also stays on the field every day, every game. He's 3 years now straight of 162 games played, 700 near 700 plate appearances, looking at like 600 at bats. He always plays, he always produces. So with all that considered, I feel like he's as safe a bet as you're going to find for first base. So I'm fine with the taking him at 35-ish or wherever his ADP is.
Yeah, I'm fine with it as well. Like you mentioned, the downside is basically last year where he went 32, 40, 247. The counting stats should be better because Atlanta should be better this year. It was a bad year for the team, and I'm not completely convinced that they didn't reintroduce some dead balls last year. There was a lot of guys who had a low home run to fly ball comparatively to the previous season. Some of that, pitchers adjusting to the pitch clock, but some of that, I'm not crazy to say that maybe they change the baseball, since they change the baseballs every year on us at least once a year. So
that actually brings up a point that I've been making since the recaps at the end of last year, where I was talking about like my example. The example at least that comes to my head is Johnny DeLuca, because and this is sort of like what I noticed across the board with last year. BABIPs even for fast players, BABIPs were way down last year. So my takeaway on that is the ball was slightly deadened, and no one was able to hit the ball hard, or at least everyone hit the ball a little bit less hard than they used to, and it hurt batting averages specifically. And then I don't know if it's the case. Honestly, I haven't read any reports that say that the ball was less bouncy. But if you look, I think the BABIPs, from what I was noticing, were pretty down on a lot of guys. So, I don't know if it bounces back. I mean, no one will know until we get there. But if you look at a guy is hitting the ball hard and his BABIP is still down, and it's like, well, why is it down? Like something else is going on. So this is all anecdotal. I don't know for sure if the ball was a little bit deadened, but it does seem like it might have been last year. For whatever that's worth, Matt Olson, at the end of the day, hopefully we get 35 homers, 110 RBIs, and a 250 plus average, and then you build around that.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, in the home run in the league, they were down. They were down from 23. They were around the same number as 22. Definitely down from 21 when we had the bouncy ball, 2019 when we had the bouncy ball. 22 was the adjustment from the 21 year. There was less than that one. That was the only year there was less in recent memory, really, in regards to home runs. And that was in reaction to a home run issue, if you want to call it that, which kind of, I guess, happened a little bit in 23 with the pitching adjustments and everything. So, yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely a different ball of some sorts. It was the worst fly ball of Matt Olson's career, and you'll hear that. It's not the first time you'll hear that from me in this show. The fewest home runs he hit in a month in 2023 was 7. He had 1 month of 7 or more in 2024, which, by the way, if you compare it to 2022, lines up. He had 1 month over 7 in 2022 as well. So, just saying there might have been a thing there, but also not overly concerned with kind of the numbers dropping a little bit from 23 when they might have been using a juice ball or something. moving on to number 4, Pete Alonso. After my theories and everything, last year he had 34 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 91, 88, hit 240, 329, 459. He's a free agent, so you haven't made projections for him. Last 4 years, I mean, between 34 and 46 home runs, 214 and 271 average. So there's been some swings in the Pete Alonso profile here. What's your thoughts on Pete Alonso, who I feel like you've been a fan of his entire career?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, I like the sluggers who you can basically pencil in for 35 homers to 250-ish average with good runs and RBIs, assuming for at least for Pete, assuming a good landing spot. I'm kind of surprised the Mets haven't just re-signed him. It seems like that's where it's headed, but I don't know. As of the recording of this, he's still a free agent. So we'll see on which lineup he ends up in. I don't mind Pete Alonso really, just in the same way that like Matt Olson, I don't necessarily fear the all or nothing sluggers. It's just you have to build around them in in the right way. Like you can't don't expect Pete Alonso to work with every single fantasy lineup. Like he is going to hit anywhere from 235, 230 to 250 ish, all ishes, but the ishes are fairly accurate. Mm-hmm. The homers, if you need homers, he's great. But after you draft him, you don't turn around probably and get Teoscar Hernandez or something. You gotta balance your team. The way you draft, you got to balance your team. So Pete Alonso definitely steers your fantasy team in one direction where you don't want to necessarily get only power low average guys after him, but he works though. I don't mind it at all. I'd be happy to draft him. It's just you gotta work with your fantasy team after you draft them to make sure you don't come out of your draft with a especially low average or no steals. But yeah, I mean he's good in my mind. If I were the Mets, I would have re-signed him already. I mean, I don't know what they're waiting for, to be honest. It's not my money though, so whatever.
This is true. It is not our money, but also that lineup without him, you added Soto, obviously that's amazing, but without Alonso sitting behind him, it's not really a scary lineup. If you look at it, and we talked about that already. By the way, worst home run the fly ball of his career. Told you you're gonna hear that. Josh Naylor, number 5. Last year had 31 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 84, 108, hit 243, 320, 456. You him down for 28 home runs, 7 stolen bases, 81, 95, hitting 261. He had his career high walk rate. K rate went up a little bit, but aligned with his career average. He actually had his career best home run the fly ball. So that's nice to see. A little bit of somebody getting better here. What are your thoughts on Josh Naylor?
Yeah, and they traded him. Did you mention that? Yeah.
I did not mention that. I was gonna leave that to
that's nice. How sweet of you. When did they did that in January, was it?
January.
Okay, yeah. So it was after we talked at the winter meetings. Okay. So yeah, I mean last year I said Josh Naylor was a sleeper for me, and I was drafting him everywhere, and he basically didn't do anything that I expected. he was good, so there was that, I guess. He was actually the third. I believe he was the third best first baseman on the player radar last year. So he was actually above Matt Olson and maybe Pete Alonso. I don't know who he was in front of, but he was the third, I believe. So if you take that and you look at his ADP, I guess what I'm saying is you could basically make a case that Josh Naylor is a sleeper once again this year. Like, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe it's Josh Naylor is just like unliked for whatever reason, or maybe maybe people are seeing stuff that I'm not seeing. But like he ended up on the player radar much better than anywhere close to where he's being drafted now. Let's see. On the player radar, he was 38th overall on the player radar last year. And at first base, he was the third first baseman behind Vlad Jr. and Bryce Harper. So the top two are the same as in my rankings this year. But yeah, so Josh Naylor was third. And he's now being drafted at 95th overall. Like, nowhere near, like, people, I don't know, honestly, I don't even know if people are expecting him to have like this major fall off. I just don't think people are necessarily respecting what he does. So, let's go through it. So he's a 30 homer hitter. Last year, 31 homers, but I think 30 homers is, if that feels about right. I don't know why. The projections, when I say the projections, I'm talking about Steamer. They expect a lot fewer homers this year, which I'm not really sure why necessarily. I mean, Arizona is a good park. I don't know. Maybe the homer per fly ball they feel like is too high for him, so he's going to have a fallback on that. So he won't hit as many homers. I don't know. I'm not sure what they're thinking. I'm thinking he's good for 30 homers ish, obviously, but it's still there. I mean, not to the point where like I have him projected for 28 homers, but Steamer's projected him for like 23, which I mean that feels like a major fall off. I don't see why he'd go from 31 homers to 23 homers. Like, honestly, I don't know. But even if he hits like 25 to 27 homers last year, here's another guy whose BABIP was way down. So his BABIP was way down. He hit 243. But, going into last year and how I feel like he still is, he's like a 270-ish hitter. I don't see him being like maybe 260-ish, but still not 240. I don't see the 240 again. So say 27 homers, 260. He stole 6 bases last year, 10 bases the year before, 6 bases the year before that. So I mean, even if you were to say like conservatively 6 steals, 27 homers, 6 steals, 260 average in the middle of the lineup. So you figure 75 to 85 runs, 85 to 90 RBIs. I mean, that's good. That's better than where he's being drafted. So again, I mean, I'm not going to write another sleeper post on him because I think that's silly. But at this point, like, I don't know why people are out on Josh Naylor every year, but I see no reason to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate Josh Naylor, and I think everything he did last year was in line with what he's done. Like, there wasn't anything that really stands out as unrepeatable, other than maybe the home run, the fly ball might be a little bit high for what I expect of him. And the fact that his batted ball numbers were pretty much in line and still got that home run, the fly ball rate. I think the home run projection comes down because of the move to Arizona, which is the worst ballpark for left-handed home runs. So not exactly the best fit for him, whereas, the Guardians are kind of middle of the pack in regards to their stadium. You look at kind of the spray chart, though, and most of the home runs he hits are pretty clear, like they're gone. That being said, you lose 5 home runs. That does take you from, a 30 home run hitter to a 25 home run hitter, which is kind of what it sounds like projections are doing to him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. yeah. No, I mean that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, you like him. Projections don't love him. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think it's also part of the position. It's going to get real cloudy here real fast. Number 6, Freddie Freeman. Last year, he had 22 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 81, 89, hit 282, 378, 476 in 147 games. You know, projected for 20 home runs, 83, 86, 277, and 10 stolen bases. You know, the contact quality dropped, exit velocity, hard hit, barrels, that all dropped from the previous year. It's the worst line drive rate of his career since his rookie season, at least. Third lowest home run to fly ball of his career. Not great numbers overall. I keep preaching the Freddie Freeman fall off is coming. Did it start last season and it's continuing, or do you think there's still another season left?
No, I'm totally on board now. I'm happily avoiding Freddie Freeman. I'm on board with the fall off is here. I feel like with Freddie Freeman, like this is where like reality for fantasy, stick with me here. Reality for fantasy isn't really reality. So I think like Freddie Freeman, for some reason, is being drafted in the top 25 overall. And last year, he was worse than Josh Naylor on the player rater. So he had a worse season than Josh Naylor last year, but is being drafted 70 plus spots in front of Josh Naylor this year and in the top 25. Like it doesn't, and Freddie Freeman is also, he had what do you have? Ankle surgery. He's not yet running. It's we're recording this in February, so he's not yet running. He's resumed swinging a bat, whatever that. I mean, sure, okay, who cares? I mean, I'm even assuming he's going to be healthy by opening day. So this isn't even taking that into account. But he's clearly not as good of a player that he once was. I mean, you can look at, again, Babbitt being way down, but in this case, I mean, he's 35 years old. He just turned 35. Okay, he turned 35 like a few months ago. So he's 35 years old. He's so he's slowing down. His steals have fallen off. His Babbitt's going down. He's basically, he looks like he's becoming like a late stage Joey Votto. Like the walks are way up, but everything else is like way down. Like the hard hit percentage is in the toilet. His fly balls are higher than you want to see. His line drives are way down. So everything you don't want to see basically on an aging player is happening to Freddie Freeman. And he's also just had ankle surgery. The people who are drafting him in the top 25, I believe they're just like ghost riding their fantasy team. Like they're just like going through the motions of being like, well, Freddie Freeman's always a top 20 player. So yeah, I'm going to draft him in the top 20. It's like, well, he wasn't anywhere near a top 20 player last year. Why are you continuing to do this? Like where is the bounce back coming from? And also like he was renowned for staying on the field and staying healthy, but now with the ankle surgery, can we even expect 145 plus games again this year? I don't know. I'm not necessarily doing it. So yeah, I'm way out on Freddie Freeman. I think I have him ranked a good 30 to 40 spots after his ADP. I'm totally out on him.
Yeah, I'm also out on him. I mean, high average is harder to maintain if you're slower and you're not hitting the ball as hard. The bat tracking is the new stat that was introduced last year. So I don't know how much necessarily to put into it, but his average bat speed is lower than league average. That average bat speed that is lower than league average, he swings less than 10%. So he's really just trying to put the ball in play. That's great for what the Dodgers ask of him. That's not really great for our game. It's the powers. I just don't expect it to come back. With that comes some of the average. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know where this expected bounce back to a second round player is coming from. Where the numbers are expected from. Last year, 130 games with the Cubs, he had 18 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 72, 78, 266, 325, 426. You have him projected for 26 home runs, 12 stolen bases, 104, 81, 267. I think at this point, you kind of plan on 500 at bats and take anything more as just the bonus. The home run, the fly ball was low, but other than that, everything kind of looked in line. But what's in line for Cody Bellinger? His career's it's a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, it's either weird or totally obvious that he had his shoulder injury and he never really recovered from it. I guess. I mean, yeah, it is weird. I'll be honest. I don't think it's wholly as a result of his shoulder injury that happened in the playoffs. But something's up with him. He's definitely had some really up and down years. I tend to like him because like the power. So even if the power, like even if you take his name away, expect like that insane like MVP year of 2019. If you take that all away and you just have a guy who hits 22 homers, around 10 to 12 steals, and hits 265 to 275. If you just have that, that's not bad. I mean, that that's pretty doable for if you're starting first baseman. It's not terrible. Like if as long as you don't have expectations that you're going to get some like crazy 40 plus homer, 20 steal, 300 plus average, like you assume you're not getting any of that, and you just go with like his baseline, and it's not terrible. And now if you put him like in a good park where he will be, the Wrigley, for whatever reason, last year Wrigley played super heavy as a pitcher's park. I don't know exactly why. It might have been like that for the last couple of years with the humidors, because I remember for a good for a long time, it was a hitter's park, at least from like May through August when it got humid and the wind was blowing out. It was a good park to be in as a hitter, but it seems like it's become a pitcher's park. Well, either way, he's going to be in a good hitter's park now. And as a lefty, you would assume it would help for a little bit on power. So I don't know. I mean, I'm in on Cody Bellinger this year. I'm a lot more in on him this year than I was prior to the trade. Like the trade really made all the difference. Like when I originally published my first baseman rankings on the Patreon, I had Cody Bellinger down probably a good tier lower than this, and maybe 3 or 4 first basemen after this. And I had him like I think outside the top 100 overall, but I moved him up when he went to the Yankees because that short porch and right, it has to help somewhat for him. So if you're looking at a guy who's still going to get 10 to 12 at worst steals, maybe 15, 260 average at worst, maybe as high as 300, and he's with the short porch and right, which should add some power. Like, so I have him at 26 homers projected. I feel like that's kind of conservative. 26, 12, 265 with good runs and solid RBIs. That's not a bad first baseman. I'm in on him. I'm in on him a lot more than I thought I would be going into the drafting season, and that's mostly because of the trade to the New York.
Yeah, I think that could potentially really help him. It may get him a little pull happy, and the average may get a drop if that happens. But yeah, I think this is about as good a landing spot as you get for him. He should slot in somewhere in the middle of the lineup. Counting numbers should be good. Cody Bellinger's fine. I just don't know year to year Like if you're somebody who really likes to plan out your numbers and know exactly what you're getting, it's not going to be exact. You're going to kind of have to finagle the numbers around a little bit on Bellinger, but yeah, don't mind this move at all for him. Let's move on to the next guy, number 8, Spencer Steer. Last year had 20 home runs, 25 stolen bases, 74, 92, hit 225, 319, 402. You have him projected for 22, 26, 71, 82, and 259. On the one hand, the start of the season was really nice. He went 15, 14, 242. The second half, he hit 5 home runs, 11 stolen bases, and hit 198. Not the greatest splits there, but feels like you're still optimistic about him.
Yeah, and he's another player who has a seemingly good speed, and his BABIP just fell off the map. I really, and his walks and his Ks are just directly in line with where they were the previous year. So, he was either very unlucky or the ball was dead. I don't know. I keep seeing this like low BABIP, so it tends to make me think that something else was going on there. And also, like Spencer Steer's hard hit percentage was up. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely like Spencer Steer more than the average drafter from what I see. Like right now he's getting drafted around 80 overall. He's getting drafted around 110 overall. Last year on the player rater, he was 80 overall. So the 30 spot difference in how much value he gave last year versus his average draft spot this year. And then also on top of that, I just really like guys like him that do that give you a little bit of everything. Like, assuming the 20 homers are for real, and there's no reason not to. He hit 23 homers in 23 and 20 homers last year. And assuming the 25 steals don't completely evaporate. So if he's a 20-20 player and his average bounces back because his BABIP bounces back and he hits anywhere from say 250 to 270, 2020 250 to 270s in the middle of the Reds lineup. It's not a bad. I mean, that's not bad to have on your team. It's not like, I don't think there's any huge upside here. Like, I'm not expecting some sort of breakout, but all he has to do is repeat last year, and he's going to have around top 80 overall on the player rater type value. So if he repeats last year with that awful average of his of 225, so if he repeats that is still going to be more valuable than where he's being drafted at. So, and I expect the average to come up from there. So that's going to give him even more value. So I don't know. I'm looking at him and I'm seeing like a top 70, a top 60 overall player, and he's getting drafted a good, 50 spots after that, So I like him. I like Spencer Steer a lot. I think he's good value. I don't think he's super, I don't think he's like super exciting, but I think people will be happy to have him. Like, he's the kind of guy he plays every day. He's in the middle of the lineup and he gives you some speed and some power. He's solid. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I do too. I think there's some room for improvement. I think he got a little bit pull heavy in the second half and just kind of mixed with his batted ball a little bit. And I think he's young enough. He can get that adjusted, get back to it. Line drive, ground ball, fly balls, almost identical season to season. I'm not worried. I think he's going to be great. I think maybe the only concern is the playing time. I notice some of the projections have him less than a full slate. So maybe they're expecting the Reds to have the problem at the corner where, there's him, there's Kristen Encarnacion Strand, Heimer Candelario, Matt McLean. But I think with his ability to play the outfield as well, I don't know that he's really going to miss too many days. Moving on to number 9, Christian Walker. He signed with the Astros. Last year in 130 games, he had 26 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 7.284, hit 251. You're projected for 34 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 83.95, and a 254 average. K rate did go up from 19 to 24%, but the exit velocity, hard hit, and barrel also all went up from 23. So not the worst thing to happen there. Got a little more aggressive, but hit the ball well. He goes from the worst park in terms of right-handed power to a top 10 stadium for right-handed power. So that is a nice change for Christian Walker. You like him at 9?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, these guys are like not. I don't know if they're like crazy exciting, but I do like Christian Walker. I mean, I think he's like, say, a poor man's Matt Olson, which is I don't think that's really like earth shattering. I think most people probably would agree with that. I think that's how he's being drafted. I'm pretty like in line with ADP when it comes to Christian Walker. I think most people expect around 30 homers, around a 250 average. And yeah, so do I. I mean, that's what I see. There is a chance, maybe there's a little bit of a chance of an upside here because, with the signing in Houston with the Crawford boxes they changed the name of the stadium. So I don't know. Did they change the name of the Crawford boxes too? I don't know, actually. I know it's no longer Minute Maid. It's now like Daikon Stadium.
Daikon Park,
yeah. It's like a Korean radish stadium. I don't know. Is it a radish box? What's the what Daikon? What do not that you're I'm not asking you because you're Korean, but what do we do with daikons? I'm kind of like pass. Are you in on daikons?
No, that's a pass.
All right. Okay, so we're both passes on daikons. Yeah, I mean Christian Walker, if he were like to hit like 45 homers this year because of Crawford boxes or whatever they call them now, it wouldn't shock me. I guess there's some power upside here, but I also think, the numbers are like, the stadium helps, right? But the numbers were definitely looking a little ragged for him. If he were to just go back to Arizona or go to a less favorable park, I probably would have been out totally on him. And I see like shades of like Carlos Santana, the baseball player, not the singer. I see a little bit like, there could be a chance here where Christian Walker's career goes in decline and it's like a Jose Abreu type scenario where it doesn't matter how good the Crawford boxes are. He's not like Christian Walker's not getting back to being good. But on the other hand, I'm willing to give him a shot. I think, realistically, 30 homers, 250 average, and, just hope you get that. And he doesn't continue to fall off because there are some signs of aging here.
There are some. I still like him. I think that the signs of aging you could also just kind of put on him being more aggressive in a contract year, which isn't unheard of. We've seen those kind of things happen, and like the swing and strike rate didn't blow up. First strike rate didn't blow up. So all the indicators are still there. His exit velocity was up. Actually, his hard hit rate was up. Barrels were up. Like he hit the ball just fine. Just not quite as many home runs. I don't know what happened within those numbers, except for maybe the ball changed a little bit. Great. I'm just saying. But yeah, I actually like Christian Walker a lot. I think there's upside for him, and I actually like him better than some of the guys we've talked about to this point. But I also kind of always like Christian Walker. I don't really have an explanation for it. I just feel like he's always underrated. Number 10, Tristan Casas. Last year in 63 games, had 13 home runs, 28-32, and hit 241. Young projected for 30 home runs, 87-91, hits 251. Very limited sample, but the K rate did climb from 25 to 31%. Other than that, everything seemed fairly in line. Contact rate we went down just a little bit from 74 to 60, 69%. Everything else was pretty much in line, though. Casas obviously had the injury, missed some time. Are you back in on like the hype from where he was last year, or somewhere down from that?
I feel like he's kind of a roll of the die at this point. Like, assuming his rib cage, I believe, is healthy, assuming that's okay, I'm good with him. I feel like, I think I said in the first baseman rankings that I'm either totally like in on him, or I'm totally out on him. And those two things don't really mesh. There's not, it's sort of like a skin attached to ribs. They don't really come together. It's kind of hard to be all in and all out on the same guy, but I'll try to explain. So I'm all in on him if the price is right. I like him a lot. And, if the price is good, I'm 100% in and happy to draft him. But if he's getting drafted too high, like if he looks really good in spring training, he feels like one of those guys who the price on his price may go up in spring training because like he looks healthy and everyone's like, oh, Casas is hitting homers. We're all in again. So I think it's mostly contingent on his draft price. So I really like him, though. I think if he's there, I'm fine with the draft pick. But you have to know that I think it's also the kind of thing where he could be totally healthy April, May, and then something goes wrong in June. And like if he has a setback in the middle of the year, it's going to be like one of those like setbacks where he's out for the season. Like I don't see him having a setback and being like day to day. Like it's not gonna be good if there's a setback. But I feel like he's healthy now. Supposedly, like he did come back at the end of September. He hit 5 homers in 76 at bats in September. So that gives me some hope. I think that's promising. So I'm in at the right price. Absolutely. I like him. I think there's some real upside here. I think mostly the upside is probably going to be on the power and the average. I think there's, because of the wall, if he hits the ball off the wall, his average, like Fenway is like one of the few places where you can get a good BABIP there in Coors. So, and he does have like great power. So if he's healthy, and last September seemed to be pointing to him being healthy, so I'm good with him, but it's going to have to be, the price will have to be right.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of, low end, like you said, low end Pete Alonso type of player. You kind of get into builds at first base where we don't have the athleticism we might have at other positions. So you're definitely looking at kind of a lower average, high 20s, 30, low 30s home run type of guy. But like you said, there is upside here where there may not be so much upside with some of these other guys. Like Christian Walker gets some upside because of Park. Bellinger gets some upside because of Park. But if that hadn't happened, there wouldn't be upside built into these guys naturally. Whereas Casas at 23, 24, there's definitely still some room for him to grow. Gets the K rate back under control and drops it back down, which I assume is very injury related. Like you just can't swing as hard and in the same manner. So I just kind of figured that everything will come around, and the rib isn't something that typically carries over season to season. I don't know exactly what happened. I'm not a doctor, but it's not one of those things I'm typically worried about season to season, like a shoulder or a wrist might be. Number 11 is Yainer Diaz. We talked about him in the catcher podcast, along with number 12, Sal Perez. So number 13 is Vinny Pasquantino. Last year in 131 games, 19 home runs, a stolen base, 64, 97, 262. You have projected for 21 home runs, 1 stolen base, 83, 93, and 273. Hard hit came up. Exit velocity came up a little bit. Contact rate came up a little bit. everything else in line. So, I mean, that's kind of a good progression for him as he moves forward. I do have a question. Is this already somebody we don't expect a full season from?
uh, not only, and maybe not a full season, but are we expecting more power at certain point? I mean,
That was my next question.
To me, Vinny Pasquantino, I mean, it sounds like a guy who's got some power. You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
like,
Vinny P, smack him out.
Hey, yeah, hey, what are you doing, huh? Hey, what
from
are
the top.
Hey, what are you, a slap hitter? Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know where the power is. I could have sworn when he was coming up, people expected more power from him, but I don't know. Maybe I imagined that. I know they expected a really good hit tool, like a 290 plus hitter, and that sort of has evaporated. Yeah, I don't know. Vinny Pasquantino, honestly, I think he's mostly being ranked and drafted, I guess, to a certain extent, he's being drafted and ranked by me, with the hope that there is this metaphorical upside somewhere that no one has seen ever. I'm guessing there's upside here. I mean, I think there is. You know, it's kind of funny that it's like Josh Naylor hits 31 homers. Steamer looks at that and says, okay, he's going to hit 23. Like, okay. And then Vinny Pasquantino has a high of 19 homers after 3 seasons, and Steamer looks at that and says, I think 26. Like, what? Wait, what? Why is Pasquantino supposed to hit so many more homers and Josh Naylor so many less? I don't know. I'm sure there's something in his numbers that is pointing them in that direction. Pasquantino does hit the ball very hard. His hard hit percentage is solid. He does have a solid, a good number of fly balls. His homer per fly ball is low, but it's always been low. So I guess there could be an uptick in there, but Kaufman isn't the best of stadiums. I don't know. Again, I'm back to like, I think there's upside here, but I couldn't for the life of me tell you exactly where that upside is. I don't know. I mean, I guess there's upside, maybe, but he hasn't shown a lick of it.
Yeah, Gray. I mean, I don't really understand where it comes from either. I know that there was in August he had 7 home runs right before he got injured. So there's maybe the thought that he was finding power at the end of the season. He was pulling the ball a little bit more in that time. So there's some markers, but I think it's kind of thin, honestly. It's like 1 month we see these things that maybe could give him a breakout, and then the age obviously is the right time for 26, 27, 28 is prime power ages. So there's that, but nothing in the numbers leads me to say a power breakout's coming for him either. And I'm a little surprised you have him this high. I'm gonna come back to him later as we talk, because again, even as you have him projected, which is improvement on last year, which is 21-1, 273, like those numbers aren't impressive. Those are free agent outfielder numbers, Gray.
Yeah. I can't argue with it. It's the supposed upside, I guess, is where I'm looking. I don't know. He has a lot. So far in his career, he seems a lot more like James Loney than anyone wants to admit.
Yeah, it seems a lot more James Loney. Like, I mean, I can't even say Luis Reyes, because Luis Reyes hits for a high average, which Vinny P can't figure it out yet. So I don't know. Well, we'll see. I know I don't quite have him high enough to draft him in anything I've been in yet. So we'll see how that kind of plays out the rest of the draft season. Number 14, Alec Burleson. Last year had 21 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 71, 78, hit 269, 314, 420. Young projected for 24 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 78, 66, and 287. Numbers across the board look same or slightly better. Her run to fly ball actually went up for him. Launch angle went up a couple of degrees, which probably helped with that. But the only problem last year was he was really bad versus lefties, but that hasn't been the case before in his history. So I actually kind of like Alec Burleson, which is not something I thought I'd ever say, honestly.
Yeah, no, I wrote a sleeper post for Burleson. I love him. I'm all in on Burleson. I think I've already drafted him twice so far. Early. This is early February. So yeah, I'm totally in on him. His ADP is way after this. I have him ranked probably a good, I don't even know, probably like 75 picks before his ADP. I'm all about Burleson. I think his power, like last year, he had 21 homers in his first full season. I don't see why that can't go up. Like I think I projected him for 26, I believe. What did I project him for? Yeah, 20.
Yeah, 24.
Yeah, 24. So yeah, I mean, I'm expecting some more homers. He has easy 5 to 7 steal speed. He has a good average. Like last year, he hit 269 with 12.8% strikeout rate in his basically in his first full year, an under 13% K rate. Like that's unheard of. Like he makes incredibly good contact. Like you said, I mean, his one drawback really is he doesn't hit well against lefties, according to his last year stats. But that's also just his last year stats. I mean, if he comes out and he hits lefties this year, like he looks like a breakout to me. I'm assuming like I'm basically drafting him like the breakout is guaranteed. And I don't know. I mean, the numbers, like I feel like you look at the numbers and the worst case scenario is a repeat of last year, which was 20 homers, 21 homers, 9 steals, 269 average. So if that's the case, like, okay, maybe you could do better where he's going in drafts, but I mean, not really. When you look at like on the player rater last year, he was a top 100 player last year already. Like he was the 95th best player on the player rater last year. So he's already a top 100 player last year, and like he's going a good 100 picks after that on average. Like he is, I feel like he's like my number. Actually, he's going right now. His ADP is 217. So he's like, I mean, for me, he's like my number one sleeper. Like I want Alec Burleson in every league. So even if he does what he did last year, which was solid, if not spectacular, he's a top 100 player. If he beats what he did last year, which I really think he can do in power, speed, and average, he's going to be an easy top 75 overall player, and he's going after 200 overall. So again, like, I didn't for a long time, for many years, I didn't write sleeper posts about first baseman. And in some leagues I should mention Burleson doesn't even have first base eligibility.
So he's not going to qualify in most leagues.
He had 15 games, so he qualifies in a lot of leagues, but not in NFBC, and maybe not in ESPN. He does in Yahoo. Everyone qualifies in Yahoo, but Burleson for me is like. So what I was going to say, though, was with like first baseman, for many years, I didn't write sleeper posts for them because I didn't think you should draft a first baseman who was a sleeper. Like I thought you should get a top first baseman because if everyone in your league has a top first baseman, you don't want to be trying to put together and gamble with a first baseman later on in the draft. But I think because the first baseman at the top aren't necessarily the strongest, like Burleson, to me, looks like he could have like a top 5 first baseman year, and he's getting drafted after 200 overall. So even if he doesn't have first base eligibility, and I'm, just talking about an outfielder right now, it's still like he's getting drafted as like a 5th outfielder. And he's like, for me, he's like a 2nd or 3rd outfielder. So even if he's even if he's outfield only in your league, he's worth drafting. I'm a big fan. I like him a lot.
Yeah, and in a limited sample, in 23, he hit 259 versus lefties. So it's not like he can't do it. And if he does that, if he figures out how to hit versus lefties, like his line isn't that dissimilar from Freddie Freeman, who's going as a top 30 pick. I just that's one of those where the Freddie Freeman is the part that I don't really understand. You have Alec Burleson ranked really high in regards to ADP because, as you mentioned, he's going after 200. So, I love that pick. Moving on, number 15, Jake Berger, who was traded to the Rangers last year in 137 games, had 29 home runs, one stolen base, 68, 76, and hit 250. You have him down for 31 home runs, one stolen base, 66, 74, and 250. Walk rate stayed around the same range, but the K rate continues to improve. Made more contact. Contact quality numbers were around the same, but slightly down. And I guess the one thing here is he's going from the top of the order bat to maybe a bottom of the order bat. So the counting numbers and the at bats may take a hit here, Gray.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. It depends on, I think, if the Rangers wisen up with what they do with like Nate Lowe and whatchamacallit, is Nate Lowe not on the team anymore? Wait, where is he?
No, I think he's gone now. Wait, where's Nate Lowe? Say that. I should have that answer. He's on the Nationals. He got traded. Yeah.
That's right. I'm like looking at the lineup and I'm like, wait, they did get rid of Nate Lowe.
Yes, they did that, Gary. They did exactly.
So it depends on what the Rangers do with Jock Peterson. That's a better example because like right now it looks like Peterson could be in the middle of the lineup and Jake Berger at the end of the lineup, but if that could easily switch places. I think with Jock Peterson being a lefty, maybe they'll play him, versus righties at the top, and then Berger moves up against lefties. I don't know. I think it's a little bit in flux right now. And also, like, how many games are you getting from Corey Seager? Maybe 110, maybe if you're lucky. Adolis Garcia is fading. So yeah, I mean, I think there's some movement here for Jake Berger. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be like anything more than a 30 homer, like 30 to 32 homers, 240-ish average, 250. Actually, he said 250 3 years in a row. Take that, Chris Davis. I like Jake Berger for what he is. I don't know if he's like, I don't see like any huge upside here, but maybe if he gets lucky with like RBIs, if he falls into like one of those random like 110 RBI years with like 32 homers and a 250 average, honestly, it's not that different than what you're hoping from Matt Olson. So I don't mind Jake Berger. I'm happy to draft him. I just don't think you should be expecting anything incredibly like amazing from him.
Yeah, I think this is one where you're not going to get Jake Berger, Greg, because he's going significantly higher, I think, than where you have him ranked. He's going as the 11th first baseman, and as I mentioned, you have him down to 15. So it sounds like other people are more excited for him. And again, like he's 3250, which isn't dissimilar from a lot of the guys that we talked about earlier in the show.
Yeah, that always falls into okay. So let's talk about that for a second because that tends to because that's a pitfall that people fall into where it's like, well, I don't need to draft Matt Olson. I can draft Jake Berger like 75 picks later. It's like, yeah. But there's a reason why Jake Berger is 75 picks later. I mean, there is a little bit like it's like Matt Olson will be hitting third in an amazing lineup. In theory, obviously, last year there was injuries. So it's not like, nothing's set in stone in baseball. But I mean, in reality, it should be a good lineup. So it's like Matt Olson will be hitting in the middle of a great lineup. Jake Berger could be hitting eighth in a lineup. it's a new park. You don't know how he's going to react to that. The 30 homers and the 250 average look good in theory, but he's also got no upside. At least his numbers have never shown any upside. Where Matt Olson hit 54 homers 2 years ago. So Matt Olson also hit for a good average 2 years ago. So there's and Matt Olson he plays every single game and he gets like 700 plate appearances. I mean, there is a reason why Matt Olson is going in the top 30 and Jake Berger is going around 115 overall. I mean, yes, you could get close to the same stats, but don't pretend like Matt Olson and Jake Berger are the same player.
No, I wasn't even referring to Olsen necessarily. I was thinking more.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to direct that towards you. I mean the people out there.
But I know what you're saying.
Yeah, the people who do say like at the draft, they're like, "Well, you got Matt Olson at 30. I got Jake Berger at 115. I got the same guy." Like, no, you didn't. You didn't get the same guy.
You didn't. You didn't get the upside. You didn't get the counting numbers
in some ways, but you didn't get the same guy.
Yeah. No, I completely get that. But I meant more in the realm of kind of where he's going in the Christian Walker, Casas, Vinny P, like that area. I like him as much as any of those guys. But again, he's going to be at the bottom lineup, so you have to know you're going to lose some of those at bats, some of those counting numbers. But then again, he was in a terrible lineup before, so it's hard to put too much on that. And as you mentioned, he could move up the lineup if there's some non-performers. We certainly saw Langford struggle at different times. We've seen Josh Jung never stay on the field. We've seen Adalas start to decline. So any of those things could lead to Berger getting a bump as well. Yep. Number 16, another guy that I always tend to draft, Ryan Mountcastle. Last year in 124 games, 13 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 54, 63, 271. Young projected for 27 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 72, 83, 273. Should get some help now that they're pulling in the left field wall and lowering it. He actually had the best contact rate of his career, best O swing and lowest swinging strike. So he's actually improving on his eye. Just needs some power back.
Yeah, actually, I came up with a mnemonic for the Camden Yards fence moving. So it's Roy G. Biv, righty Orioles, yard go ball, I victimize. Huh?
I like it. I don't remember a new set of letters, so that helps.
Yeah, exactly. It works for the Rays as well. Roy G. Biv. Rays outfield go big if a lefty. you gotta say lefty with a V. Okay, so I like Ryan Mountcastle actually a lot this year because, like you mentioned, like he's like someone whose numbers got better last year, but the power fell off. But you would assume with the fence coming in that, like the last time the fence was where it was for Mountcastle, he hit 33 homers as an Oriole. So I think I don't know exactly where, but I believe I took him up a good 5 spots in the first baseman rankings after it was announced that they were moving the fence in. Like I'm in on Mountcastle, for sure. I honestly, I kind of wish I would have put him above Jake Berger, but Jake Berger feels a little bit safer. Where Ryan Mountcastle, I am sort of dream casting a power resurgence because of the fence coming in, but I do like him. I like him a lot more now than I did maybe say 3 months ago. I'm excited. I think he's going to be a guy who. He could end up being on a lot of my teams as my corner infielder. I could see that if maybe a deeper league. I was gonna say first baseman, but no, he's not gonna be my first baseman. I'll be honest with you. I'm not gonna draft Ryan Mountcastle as my first baseman, but I will be happy to draft him as my corner man. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Maybe in an AL. I think I'd be okay with it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, AL. Yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that. I don't usually think about AL, but yeah, you're right.
I will say there is room for him to climb because after Gunnar and Adley, I don't know if there's necessarily a batting order structure because everybody else kind of has to earn their spot day by day. I feel like Ryan O'Hearn is currently scheduled in the 3 spot. Does anybody feel good about that? Tyler O'Neill, Colton Cowser, Cedric Mullins, like there's a lot of movement within this lineup. I mean, Jackson Holiday could end up being 3 by the end of the year if he just does what we all expected him to do. So I do feel like there's some room for movement in this lineup that might not exist in some others, or like in a lineup that's expected to be this good. It's weird that there's this much movement possible.
Yeah, no, totally. No, I agree. I think people get people get locked in when they're drafting and when they're doing their projections or their rankings. I think people get locked in with how a lineup is quote unquote supposed to be when, like, in reality, we're going to get to the middle of April and, Tyler O'Neill is going to be hurt. Colton Cowser is going to be hitting 8th. Jordan Westberg is going to be hitting 2nd. And Adley Rutschman will be hitting 5th. Jackson Holiday will be hitting 3rd. And Ryan Mountcastle will be hitting 4th or something. Like this whole lineup could be totally different. Like the only thing I'd really count on is Gunnar Henderson hitting leadoff because, that's what he did last year. So I'm assuming he's going to continue to do that because he had success there. But otherwise, this whole lineup's totally and that goes for like just about every lineup. Like they're all going to change like depending on injuries and who's hot, who's not, who's 5 minutes ago. And I don't, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, except for maybe the Rockies lineup. They may run out 1 through 9 in the same order until somebody gets hurt.
And then the Rockies lineup will be whoever you least expect hitting 3rd, and whoever you most expect to hit 3rd will be hitting 9th. That's all we know for the Rockies lineup.
Speaking of the Rockies, number 17, Michael Toglia, last year in 116 games, had 25 home runs, 10 stolen bases. 62, 55, 218. You have him projected for 33 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 77, 86, and 237. I wasn't sure he would ever stick in the majors, and I was really, really starting to doubt it. But here we are. He is now a top 20 first baseman and one with some upside, Gray.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, he was actually, I wrote a sleeper post for him too. He's another guy who I like a lot, he was one where I don't know, maybe because people have been burned so many times by Rockies players that they're just completely sick of taking a chance on them. But he was a guy who I expected more people to be excited about. And it doesn't seem like anyone is, at least up until this point. So, you already mentioned his stats, but 25 homers and 10 steals, that alone's got me interested, right? I mean, and that was in 116 games, 300 under 400 at bats, 399 at bats. So yeah, I mean that alone, assuming he is a switch hitter. So assuming he, Bud Black, and I hate to assume anything with Bud Black, but assuming Bud Black just plays him every day, which I mean, like I just said, he's a switch hitter. So I don't. What splits is he doing? I mean, the Rockies have no one to really maybe occasionally they'll start a Hunter Goodman at first or something, but they really should be playing Michael Toglia every day. So assuming he plays every day and he's a switch hitter, so why not? I really think the reason why the sleeper post was really 25 homers, 10 steals in 2/3 of a season, that lit up my eyes. I was like, what? I love that. Let me see if there's anything else here. And then, you dig into him and you're like, well, yeah, he probably won't hit for a great average. Just the average won't be great, but everything else looks completely repeatable with upside. So yeah, I'm in. Why not? Absolutely. I think, if he comes back with a 35 homer, 15 steal season, hitting 220, Wouldn't shock me. I'd be all about it. I'd take that in a second. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some room for improvement. He doesn't necessarily, he may not be a 220 hitter. He started the season up within the majors, really struggled, came back in early June, and from then on had the 21 home runs, 10 stolen bases, hit 233 versus like I think he was hitting sub 200 in his early call up. So there is some room with that, early call up numbers affecting the overall season average and everything, that he just continues to build on it and improve. So I do like Michael Toglia, and I hope that there's some more improvement from him as he continues to grow, and not a huge step back like we've seen from some Rockies players in the past. Number 18, Isaac Paredes. He's been all around the world. He's been from the Rays to Chicago to Houston. 153 games last year. He had 19 home runs, a stolen base, 64-80, 238. You have him projected for 31 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 81-77, 253. He struggled when he got to the Cubs, finished the season a little bit better. He had 16 home runs with the Rays in 101 games. And the Houston ballpark should be perfect for him, actually.
Yeah, no, completely. I think I can't imagine a better ballpark for him. Maybe Coors, but yeah, no. I think Paredes, he's like he's something like 99.9% pull hitter. I don't think anything. His spray chart is like everything is swooped left, baby. He's like nothing's going right. I mean, if he's able to pull the ball into the Crawford boxes, yeah, man. He's a guy who I think right now his price is, pretty solid. I would say if there's like, I wouldn't necessarily go for again, I don't know if he's necessarily a first baseman, but actually in some leagues he's not a first baseman because he only has eligibility at third base, but in other leagues he does have first and third eligibility. But anyway, I think he's probably more of a corner man, and he's being drafted as a corner man. He's right now he's currently 225 overall ADP. So yeah, for that price, I'm totally down with it. I'd be happy to grab him there. I think getting back to his solid breakout in Tampa Bay when he hit 31 homers and 250, that doesn't seem out of the realm of possibilities. I probably, I wouldn't necessarily put him down for that, but it could happen. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily shock me. I would say, if he's definitely like, if he's 35, if he hits 35 homers in 250, it wouldn't shock me either. So yeah, he's basically Matt Olson. Everyone's Matt Olson this podcast. Yeah, I mean, he's like a poor man's Matt Olson. So he's got no speed, but 35 homers and 250 average. Bring it on.
Yeah, so we'll look forward to him launching a bunch out in the Crawford boxes. I mean, I like him as well. I think he's a really solid corner man. I would have been disappointed to see him leave the Cubs, except that we got Kyle Tucker out of it. So I'm perfectly happy with that. And Houston basically got Alex Bregman back at a much better cost point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the Astros did pretty well with bringing in Paredes. He's a like we've been saying. I mean, he's a really perfect fit for that park, and also I think he could be hitting in front of Jordan. So he should see pitches to hit. It could be a really good year for Paredes.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the next tier here. Number 19, Alec Baum. 220. Or last year he had 15 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 62-97, hit 280. You have him projected for 18 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 72-92, and a 282 average. The K rate does continue to improve, and that's about the most exciting thing I could find to say about Alec Baum.
Yeah. Alec Baum really. Alec bummed me out last
Bombed
year.
out and depleted.
Yeah, I mean, he bummed me out last year big time because like I assumed that the power was going to do an uptick. It's a good park. He's a righty, so he's in the right spot to be hitting for that power in Philly. It's a good pull park for righties. I don't know. He went from 20 homers to 15, and it's just like it stinks because like everything else is fine. Like everything else, like he is like neutrally, he's a 280 hitter. So if he could up his power to like 25, 30 homers, I mean he would be a top 5 first baseman. I mean, he could be great. He could be great, but the power just does not seem like it's developing at all for him. And if anything, I wouldn't be shocked if the Phillies get rid of him. Like he doesn't seem long for the Phillies. Like they're sort of like, they gave him the 1-year contract. And yeah, they don't seem like they're totally sold on Alec Baum either. So I don't know. It's hard to be too enthusiastic. It's also, I think it's worth pointing out if it's not totally clear from our reaction to Alec Baum, we are in a new tier at this point. This is not the same tier as the last one. These are new. This is a level down for me. So Isaac Paredes was like, it's kind of exciting. Alec Baum is kind of like, it's not exciting.
I have a starting first baseman.
yeah, I have a guy who plays a decent amount.
He plays baseball for a Major League Baseball team.
He's on a Major League Baseball team. Yeah, so it is what it is. But I don't know. I mean, I guess in the right scenario for a corner man, in like if you need batting average and counting stats, I guess it's okay. I mean, there's worse things, but yeah, he's pretty boring.
Yeah, he's pretty boring. Really makes me miss the days of PEDs and first baseman all hit 40 home runs and 280. That was a great time to play fantasy. When you could just grab a first baseman whenever. It was pretty awesome, Gray.
Yeah.
Unlike our next guy, who is number 20, Yandy Diaz, 14 home runs, no stolen bases last year, 55, 65, 281. You have projected for 21 home runs, 87, 69, and a 291 average. The power bump from 2023 did not last. Who could have possibly seen that? 5-degree launch angle. That is the 8th among qualified hitters. You needed to know. I mean, average exit velocity has always been nice with him. 55% ground ball limits the upside here a little bit, Greg.
Actually, you said 5-degree launch angle, and I cackled, and then I looked at his historical launch angle, and there was a year when he had a negative 7.9.
Yeah, this isn't the worst. Like, it's not by far not the worst.
Yandy Diaz is literally the guy at the carnival that is trying to do with the sledgehammer and win himself a stuffed animal. He really wants a SpongeBob on that sledgehammer ring the bell game. That's Yandy Diaz. Yeah, he's so unfortunate because like you look at him and he's built like a brick house. You're like, this guy he's gonna rock some power. This guy is big, and then he's like 12 homers. Oh man, it's also super unfortunate because he's going to be in Tampa in a Big Stein Stadium, which is a short porch and right. So you would think that as he would be able to power some balls out the opposite way, but I mean you can't power balls out if you're powering balls into anthills in the infield. It's just not gonna happen if you're slamming the ball into the dirt every time. So yeah, I don't know. He's a bummer. This tier is a bunch of these are real bummers. I hope you already drafted a first baseman. Long story short.
Yeah, I mean, this tier's been a bummer, Gray. If anybody ever could have used the Jose Bautista launch angle lesson, it was Yandy Diaz, and it's really sad nobody ever gave him that one.
Oh my God! Can you imagine? Can you imagine Yandy Diaz with a good launch angle?
With a
Oh.
launch angle, it was like double digits. It'd be great. It'd be something to behold. It'd be like a lesser versus Jordan. Like that's basically what we'd be looking at. Maybe even Jordan. Maybe he'd just be Jordan Alvarez if he could launch the ball. But he can't, so he's not. And number 21 isn't either. Luis Reyes. Last year he had 4 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 83-46, hit 314. You're projected for 5 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 91-51, and a 322 average. He doesn't strike out. He doesn't walk. He has a 94.2% K rate. I mean, do we need to say any more? He is what he is.
Yeah, no, he is. He, in the right scenario, like last year, I drafted him in one league, where I think I finished 8th out of 12 teams. So this may not be the best example, but I guess in the right format with the right team, if you really need batting average, but yeah, I mean, he's just not great for anything else. Like if he were to steal 20 bags and hit 315 or 325, I'd be a little bit more interested, but yeah, he's so boring.
He really is great.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, there's times where he's useful if you need batting average, if you've just neglected it for your entire draft. He can help out. He's not going to give you like negative usage. He's just not going to give you positive usage very often either. So number 22, Tyler Soderstrom. Last year in 61 games, he had 9 home runs, had 18 runs, 26 RBIs, and hit 233. You're projected for 27 home runs, 63, 71, and 241. If he still had catch-all eligibility, this would be a line that we could discuss, Gray.
Yeah,
he did cut his K rate down from his first look from 31% to 25%. That was a nice drop there. Really kind of improved across the board. Contact quality, contact numbers, launch angle went up from 5.7 to 9.6. So really good stuff here from Tyler Soderstrom, at least this late. I got a little excited to have something positive to say.
Yeah, no, I think he's one of the bright spots of this tier for sure. I think there's I think there's something to him that potentially, like, also in the A's new park, Babbage, in theory, Babbage should be better because there'll be less foul territory. So his average should come up a little bit. I would assume probably maybe like 5 to 15 points. So yeah, I mean, there could be something here. I very nearly wrote a sleeper post for him. I do like him actually. I don't think there's insane upside. I think we're talking probably like 25 to 28 homers and a 240 average with no speed in a terrible lineup. So there's a definite ceiling on his upside, but there is some upside. I'm not totally against drafting him. So yeah, I don't mind him in compared to at least some of the guys we're talking about now.
Yeah, I don't mind him either, and it just from what I can judge by the outline of the stadium and dimensions, it looks like it should be good for lefty power. So at least for the next couple of years, Tyler Soderstrom should be in at least a good location.
Oh, I know. Oh, actually, I have the so it was Roy G. Biv. Now Oakland's mnemonic is Soy G. Biv. It's Sacramento outfield. You got borked in foul territory.
I don't really know what that means, Gray, but I like it. We'll keep that.
Perfect. Oh, good. I'm glad we're on the same page then.
Number 23, Nolan Chanel last year had 13 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 62-54, hit 250. Young projected for 15 home runs, 11 stolen bases, 81-52, 267. He is killing the average age of the Angels. But other than that, Gray, what do you have to say about Nolan Chanel?
The Angels are like, you know how many discounts we can get if we all go to the movie theater together and we can all get senior citizen discounts? And here comes Chanel. Like, we got to pay full price for you, man. Like, that's not cool.
They have to keep around somebody to watch for, the time that everybody's supposed to report back, only for him, because everybody else is already in bed. They don't have to worry about Anthony Rendon not showing up, like out partying. No, he's already in bed. He's been in bed.
That's literally the only time you could ever say Anthony Rendon not showing up in a sentence and it making sense. No, Anthony Rendon never shows up.
He's never showed up in the last 5 years.
I think Nolan Chanel is like, I mean, he feels like to me, like Vinny Pasquantino minus power, and Vinny Pasquantino has no power. So I think, if I were Ron Washington, I would be so high on cocaine right now. No, if I were Ron Washington, I would bat Nolan Chanel lead off and move Taylor Ward down. But, for whatever Ron Washington's doing, I don't know. I'm not here to speculate on where Chanel's actually going to be hitting. But if he's in the middle of the order, it makes no sense. So hopefully he's hitting like leadoff, because the only thing he really has is good contact. He doesn't really have much else. He makes, actually, I should say, he makes a lot of contact. It's not necessarily hard contact. He has some of the worst hard contact in the league. So he's definitely not making great contact, but he is making a lot of it. So maybe he hits leadoff. I don't know, potentially, but he has no power. I don't. It's crazy to me. Like, I really, like, I've said this many times before, but like, you look at like Fangraphs prospect reports, and it's like hit tool 60, and then you're like, this guy's a 250 hitter. What are they talking about? And it's like, if I were them, I would remove the prospect reports, because it's like, once a guy is up, he's nothing like what you thought he was going to be. And it never, like, it's like 1 in 10 guys works out the way you expected. Like, so few of them ever really work out how you expect. But anyway, Nolan Chanel is like a 15 homer, 10 steal, 250 hitter. It's not great. I'll be honest with you. It's not great.
Yeah, great. His average bat speed is 6.3 miles per hour, lower than the MLB average, Gray. That's his average bat speed. He only swings that fast 2.4% of the time.
He's like
he's 6 miles an hour under, and he swings that hard 2.4%.
You know those pharmaceutical commercials where there's like an old couple in a car and there's someone walking past them? So imagine there's a person swinging a bat and you could walk through the batter's box without being hit. That's Nolan Chanel.
Yeah, well, yeah. When your fast swing rate is 2.4, it's not good. Again, I don't know what historical numbers are going to be for fast swing rate, but 2.4 is a bad one.
Wait a minute. In his defense, maybe he's like only check swinging. He's like, he's just stopping in the middle of every, like, maybe he doesn't want to commit. Maybe he's like one of those guys who just can't commit. I don't know. I'm trying to help.
We're moving on, Gray. I'm just going to get us out of this before something bad gets said. That sounded all sorts of wrong. Moving on to number 24, Luke Raley, 137 games last year, 22-11, 58-58, and a 243 average. You're projected for 20 home runs, 12 stolen bases, 53-60, and 252. K rate dropped just below 30%. from 31.5%. Contact rate up, hard hit rate went down a little bit. I don't know. I'm trying to make things that sound interesting here. Great. Did that sound interesting to you?
I mean, in fairness, I like Luke Raley. He will be platooned though, and his platooning is going to hurt his runs and RBIs. So, like you mentioned, he had 22 homers and stole 11 bags last year and hit 243. Like, if you were to say that with, say 90 runs and 100 RBIs because he was playing every day, you'd be interested. But unfortunately, he doesn't play every day. So you're cutting out the runs and RBIs. But if you're able to move him in and out of the lineup in, say, a daily league, I don't know. I mean, him moving in and out of the lineup in a daily league sounds to me better than like Nolan Chanel. And Nolan Chanel is like, people still have some sort of hope for Nolan Chanel, I think. And maybe not. Maybe I'm making that up in my head. But what I'm saying is, like, Luke Raley is basically free in every league. Actually, Nolan Chanel is free in every league too. Yeah, I'm looking at their ADP. They're both free in every league. But I guess what I'm saying is Luke Raley is free in every league. And if you're able to move him in and out of the lineup, there could be something there. So, we're at a point in the rankings where everyone's got issues here. I mean, there's no easy, there's no easy buy here where you're like, oh, that guy sounds great. There's all problems. So, with that said, 20 homers, 12 steals. It's not terrible. It just, you gotta work around his platoon.
Yeah, speaking of things heading in a downward spiral, number 25, Paul Goldschmidt. Last year, 22 home runs, 11 stolen bases, 70, 65, hit 245. You him down for 20 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 76, 83, and 247. This is one where ADP is much higher grade. They have him as the 14th first baseman over the last couple of weeks. It is the worst strikeout rate of his career, the worst walk rate of his career, the worst swinging strike, the worst first strike rate, exit velocity, hard hit, and barrel all down from 2023. I don't have historical numbers for bat tracking, but 72.5 average bat speed was 84th among qualified hitters. Not great.
I know. So here's my thing. So I feel like there's a subset of people who think like going to the Yankees is a panacea to fix everything, when you have so many examples where that is not the case. Like, you go back to who was their first baseman last year, Anthony Rizzo. He was awful on the Yankees for 3 straight years. I mean, it was never good. Like, there was never a point where it's like, oh, he's hitting in the middle of the lineup. This is great. It's like, no, he's hitting in the middle of the lineup, and it's awful. He wasn't good for 3 straight years. Outside of that, you also had like Josh Donaldson, who people were like, oh, he's going to Yankees. Things will be good. Things did not get good. They got worse. Like, it's not going to help his aging. I'm talking about Paul Goldschmidt. It's not going to help his aging curve where everything is getting worse just because he's on the Yankees now. Like, I don't know, like Aaron Boone, for whatever reason, refuses to move people in the lineup. Like, people sit in that lineup who are not good, and they'll sit in the middle of it because Aaron Boone just loves himself some vets. So Paul Goldschmidt could hit in the middle of the Yankees lineup all year and be terrible. It could very well happen. If I were Aaron Boone, I would probably move Goldschmidt behind Bellinger and maybe even behind Giancarlo, and definitely behind Dominguez. Like, I would move Goldschmidt down the lineup, but there is a chance Goldschmidt hits in the middle of the lineup. But even if he hits in the middle of it, it's not going to help all the points that you made about how he's getting older. Like, his Ks are going up, his BABIP's going down because he's slow and he's making all kinds of terrible contact. Like, it's not like all of a sudden everything's going to get better. It's not going to get better. I'm not drafting Goldschmidt anywhere. I'm purposely much lower than his ADP. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna take a reversal of aging for this to happen. I feel like. I mean, when you combine everything that, that we rattled off there, and he got desperate. He started swinging earlier, trying to get out in front and hit those, first pitch fastballs. That didn't even work. Like nothing is gonna fix everything that's gone wrong. Now, could he
You know
go
what?
20?
You know what's really not going to fix him is like when he's starting to press and he's in the New York media and they're like booing him. It's really going to get ugly.
It is. Now, I will say last year he went 22-11, 245. If he goes 20-10, 240, that's not the end of the world. Like, that's not the worst thing that can happen this late among first basemen. But again, this isn't where he's actually going. He's going so much far ahead of where we're talking about right now that, like, you're imagining those numbers now. You need to imagine them when we're talking about like Burleson and Berger and Mountcastle, who still have upside.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
It's not happening.
Yeah. So great. That is the end of our first baseman that we're going to cover here. Do you want to give the people some later names real quick before we get out of here?
Yeah, let's go. I like Mike Bush. I really, because you're feeling under the weather, I'm gonna let you talk about Mike Bush because he's a Cub and that's your team. So I'm gonna defer to you on him. I'll move on to Davison. Absolutely saying his name wrong. De Los Santos. The Marlins first baseman probably is gonna hit 160. I mean, he might hit for a really terrible average, the Marlins first baseman. But you know what? He also hit 40 homers last year in AAA, and he's only 21. He's not old. 40 homers as a 21-year-old. I'm actually, it wasn't just in AAA. It was in all the minors, but still in AAA, he hit 12 homers in 50 games, but 40 homers across 3 levels. Anyway, long story short is, I want to try it. Why not? I mean, the Marlins have nothing to lose if they're actually gonna play this guy De Los Santos for 100 and for as many games he goes out there for, say 145 games, if they're going to do that and he hits 30 homers, maybe he does only hit 215. I don't know. I mean, there's a chance for that. He didn't necessarily struggle with strikeouts last year, but he has had issues with strikeouts and he has had issues with batting average. So there is a chance, but he's so young. I mean, if there was any other team that was looking at putting a starting first baseman at, if there was another team in the major leagues who was like, we're going to start this guy from day one. He's only 21 years old and he hit 40 homers in the minors last year. I think a lot of people would be crazy excited for him. But I think because he's on the Marlins, people are like, not really that crazy about him. He's being drafted around 540 overall. So he's basically free in any league. You can get him even in a 15-team mixed league. You can get him as like the last man on your bench if you want. Like there's absolutely no competition for him in Miami or in drafts. So yeah, I'm saying De Los Santos, grab him at the end of your deep league drafts.
Yeah, Gray, I like that call out. I like the chance on De Los Santos late. As you mentioned, Michael Bush is the starting first baseman for my Cubbies, and they don't have anybody else. He is the first baseman. There's nobody else that they're going to bring in for it. So, he's locked into the position. He's going to get everyday at bats in the middle of that lineup. And, realistically, he struggled last year in the second half. He dropped his K rate 6 points in the set from first half, second half. His BABIP dropped 120 points, Gray, from first half to second half. So if just BABIP luck neutralizes and he just goes from a 216 to a 230, 240 hitter, the numbers across the board are going to look a lot better on Michael Busch. He's not going to give you anything overly impressive, but if you're looking late at first base, I don't mind Michael Busch. As you kind of let me, pick that one. I will just throw a couple names here. Rhys Hoskins, obviously coming back from the injury, didn't look great, but he was coming back from injury, so another year away. I think there's possibility there. Christian Encarnacion Strand, and also missed most of the season with a wrist injury. Wrists are one of those injuries I worry about, but you have him down at 37. He's going as the 19th first baseman, so I thought I should mention him.
I think with my problem with Christian Encarnacion Strand is I don't know the Reds' plan for him for at bats. Like if we get to the middle of March and he looks like the actual starter, I could see moving him up. I like him. I just don't know where the at bats are coming from. And now after they signed Austin Hayes, I'm even more confused. So it's more about like, I don't know where the at bats are there for Strand versus me not liking him. But yeah, anyway.
No, I mean, that's certainly fair. There's a question of where those are coming from, given that Steer's at first base right now, Candelario's at third. But the DH is also penciled in tentatively as Gavin Lux, and he doesn't really need to hit the ball. I don't know why he would ever be penciled in as a DH, if I'm being completely honest. So I think there's some opportunity for him to get a look here. And then John Kinsey Noel, who we talked about last year and loved at different times. He was actually pretty decent until September when he was just unplayable. But if he does anything other than what he did in September, he might be somebody to take a look at here as we are discussing late first baseman.
There's also if we get Jose Miranda, I was looking at him because I saw he hit 284 last year with 9 homers, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. I like, I'm a fan of that. I like how that sounds. And then I saw it was in 400 plus at bats, and I was like, what? he had 9 homers in 400 plus at bats. What is going on here, man? What's up, man? What's up with that, bro? Anyway.
Yep, that's a good question, Gray. And if all else fails, you can always pick up Josh Bell when he gets traded sometime in April, May, June, July, somewhere in there.
Josh Bell is like if he is not traded, we should actually. Is there a way? I wonder. Pat Hoberg would know this. Can we bet on whether or not Josh Bell is going to get traded?
We'll get traded this season.
Josh Bell, if he is not traded, I feel like we should bet on who he's going to get traded to. I would take the Brewers +5. Does that make any sense? Can you do a +5 on a trade?
Just start laying money wherever you want it. Just all over the place, Gray.
Maybe.
I like it, Gray. Let's find out where we can start laying these bets and maybe take a look at some lines together. If you have any questions, you can always find us on Twitter at Razzbeaton, at Razzball. Leave comments out on youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy. Tell us your lineup questions, how old or young we look, how good we look, whatever it is, we're here for it. Talk to you later, Gray.
All right, Lades.